Hey everybody, welcome to Bura Tech. In this episode, we're going to be asking the question, is going to a coding bootcamp in 2019 worth it? Alright, welcome back. So in this episode, like I said, we're going to be talking about coding bootcamps. Now, I wish coding bootcamps were readily available in the 2000s when I was going to university. They weren't, and I had to learn coding all by myself. Believe it or not, a lot of computer science and computer engineering degrees don't do a good job at teaching coding, hence why boot camps are a really good idea. But are coding boot camps really a good idea? Let's find out. So I'm going to be talking about coding boot camps first, and then at the end of this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips if you're considering going to a coding boot camp. So my path to coding is a bit of a convoluted one, but at the end of the day, I really wish there were coding boot camps when I was going to university. And as I've said, even if you have a CS degree or a computer engineering degree, I would recommend going to a coding boot camp. Now, the number one reason you should go to a coding boot camp is the connections. A lot of these coding boot camps have connections with employers in the area. And this is something that's really good because getting that soft introduction will lead you to more success down the road. Now, there's lots of facets to a coding boot camp, connections being one of them. The other is the curriculum and the effectiveness, and the other is the social aspect. All of these things make a coding boot camp a really good idea, but not all coding boot camps are the same. Some are better than others. So if you're considering going to a coding boot camp, make sure you go to the best one in your area. But before you even go, you want to make sure that you like coding. So chances are, if you don't know how to code, then you've been hearing you should learn to code over and over again. And with good reason. Coders do make a lot of money. And the reason why they make a lot of money is because programming itself is a hard job to do. Not everybody can do it, and coding boot camps and online tutorials make it a lot easier. Remember, with any job or any career, there's always a supply and demand aspect to it. Now, one of the major things that you should understand about coding boot camps is that if you don't want to be a coder, then you should absolutely not go. Coding is not for everyone. There are a lot of smart people who don't want to code. I've met people who have gone and done philosophy degrees and are really good coders now. And I know people that have done CS degrees and they don't want to code ever again. It's up to you personally whether you want to code. Personally, I love coding. I love the challenge. I love learning new things. And I think it's really good for the mind to be a coder. And of course, this is a person who's been coding for a very long time, has made a ton of projects with code, and runs a company that teaches people how to code. So you can say that I really do like coding. Now, if you want to learn how to code, I would suggest taking some online tutorials first. You can take Mammoth Interactive's coding tutorial, which is 170 hours, and it takes you from basic web development all the way to machine learning. I would take this course before you consider going to a boot camp. The reason is that if you hate learning this material, then a boot camp is not good for you. Now, some people don't like learning online. I personally love learning online, which you can see a video of me talking about it right here. Because I like learning online, I make online tutorials, but some people have to go to a class, and this is where coding boot camps shine. So again, if you want to go to a coding boot camp, take this course first. So like I've mentioned, the entire ensemble of a coding boot camp is really good. The best way to learn something is to just completely immerse yourself in it for a long period of time. And once you do this, you'll become really good at what you're doing. And coding boot camps do this. At least the good coding boot camps do this. On top of that, you get to meet like-minded people, and you get to meet a bunch of the teachers who are industry professionals. And on top of all of that, you get the connections and the soft introductions into the big companies in your area. Like I've said before, this is the biggest and best part about going to a coding boot camp. Now, let's say you're super smart and you love learning online. Should you go to a coding boot camp? Well, believe it or not, it's going to be really difficult to get a job if you don't have those soft connections. If you're really good at what you do, you have to spend a lot of time meeting people. And the coding boot camps take that out of the equation for you. The other thing about coding boot camps is they have a curriculum, and I've looked at several different coding boot camps, and their curriculums are really good. In fact, they are completely opposite to a lot of computer science and computer engineering degrees. A lot of those university and college degrees tend to teach more theory than practical application. Well, a coding boot camp teaches you more practical application. Having said that, theory is a great thing, but the problem is that most schools overemphasize it. So just because a computer science degree doesn't have a lot of practical application to it, it doesn't mean that the professors or the people involved don't want that. Now, I've personally sat on the board of directors of a college degree, and it can be extremely challenging to get new courses in there. Because colleges are certified, there are many levels of certification and processes to make that actually happen. So today, you can't just add in another module to a college course and have that being certified. It can take months. Now, this is in complete contrast to coding bootcamps and online learning. For example, we can take a new concept at Mammoth Interactive, like a new development environment, and make a course about it right away. This is awesome because we can make a course and we can get it to people as quickly as possible. This is almost impossible to do in a college setting. Now, there's probably a few CS degrees that do this out there, and if you know about that degree, please write it in the comments. So coding bootcamps can deliver the most practical information as quickly as possible, but at the same time, the certification level of a CS degree is much higher than, let's say, a coding bootcamp. So this isn't a medical degree. The thing about technology is that it changes all the time. Imagine if the human body just grew a few new organs here and there. Imagine how the medical community would deal with that. Well, that's kind of like what programming is. You know, if you look back 5, 10, 15 years, a lot of the processes and the programs are completely different. Now, of course, there's common streams like C++ and a bunch of other different types of languages. But at the same time, 15 years ago, mobile development wasn't really a thing. So what happens in computers is that things are constantly changing. So getting that up-to-date information is really important. Also, you have to realize once new technology is released, there's almost no framework to base your assumptions off of. So you're almost kind of driving blind. And this is common in technology. Now, I've talked about this in other videos, but success is a wheel, and if you want a career, you have to constantly be feeding it. And in technology, you always have to be learning new things. Now, I've personally hired people from coding boot camps at Mammoth Interactive, and I have to say I'm fairly impressed. What will make a coding boot camp for you isn't necessarily the curriculum or any of the services that they offer. It's you yourself. Speaking from personal experience, sometimes you are the limiting factor in your success. There might be something that you're doing that is preventing you from becoming really successful, and you have to figure out what that is. In fact, the sooner you figure that out and change your behavior, the more successful you'll be. Now, there's a few common tropes within programmers that are fairly easy to fall into, and I've personally fallen into these tropes myself. So these things are fairly simple. For example, do you show up to work on time? Are you a good coder? Are your soft skills good? Do you have good personal hygiene? These are things that are fairly common but are rarely talked about. Now, a lot of good coding boot camps will have a soft skills course in there. Having soft skills in a coding boot camp is really important because you can't yell at your coworker the same way that you yell at your technology. You can't be frustrated at another person the same way that you're frustrated that your code isn't working. And it's very easy to fall into this. In fact, you almost have to kind of take two different approaches, the way that you deal with your technology and the way you deal with other people. And you want to be as sincere as possible, and you also want to be as kind as possible. Soft skills is really important as a coder, and it's rarely talked about, but luckily a lot of the coding boot camps that are really successful have it in there. So that's one of the things you should look for. The other thing about coding boot camps is that a lot of them are maybe a few months, maybe 3 to 6 months, and in this time, it's almost impossible to become a really good coder. You can't really go from scratch to being a really, really good coder in that time. All that coding boot camps do is they enable you on the path to becoming a better programmer. Remember that success is a wheel and you constantly have to work at your career in order to be good at it. I often use the sports analogy. If you want to be a pro athlete, you constantly have to train. If you don't train, then you won't be a pro athlete anymore, and coding is no different. So at this point, I'm going to give you 5 tips to be successful at your next coding bootcamp. The first tip is that you should already have some coding knowledge before going in. In fact, I would learn for maybe 2 or 3 months before you actually go in. And there are many reasons for this. The first reason is that if you do all of the hard work by yourself before you actually get in there, then you're gonna get more out of it because you can ask better questions and all of the instructors will see that you're near the top of the class. If you're at the top of the class, then chances are you're gonna get a lot of praise from your instructors and probably get a better placement. My second tip is that you should build a small project before you actually go in there. And this doesn't have to be a very complicated project. It can be a simple compound interest calculator or an egg timer. It doesn't have to be very complicated, but it should be done. So if you get a simple project done, you'll understand what it's like going from nothing to having a complete project done, even if the scope is really small. small. This is incredibly important. At most coding boot camps, there are different streams that you can go into. You can go into web development, app development, machine learning, data science, UX, etc. You want to make sure that you understand which stream that you're going into first, and that's why you want to learn everything beforehand. I would recommend going into web development because there's a lot of demand for web developers, and all of the concepts tend to cross-pollinate to other areas as well. A lot of languages use a markup language, a style language, and some kind of functional language to make their project work. And by learning web development, you've already learned this. Now, if you really want to be a mobile developer, or you really want to be a data science, or you really want to be a UX person, then you can absolutely do that. All I'm saying is that I would personally go into web development if I were going in today. Also understand that if you're going into a field just for the bigger paycheck, like data science, you have to be really good at that field and you have to really like it, because just getting something for a bigger paycheck is just not going to work. You, again, have to be able to perform. At a lot of coding boot camps, they give you a few projects to add to your resume. Now, if you want to put yourself in an employer's seat, you're going to get a lot of resumes with the exact same projects. So you are probably going to have to come up with a better project than what the coding bootcamp is going to give you. Now, this is really important because coding bootcamp grads are flooding the market, and you have to differentiate yourself in some way, shape, or form. And the best way to differentiate yourself is to have more projects. In fact, if you have a bunch of projects that are not the standard coding bootcamp project, then that is really good. Standing out in one way or another will absolutely get you hired. So the last tip that I have for you is that if you don't get hired right away, then you should be constantly producing more projects. It can take anywhere from a week to 3 months to get a job. In that time, you want to be focusing on your skills. In fact, if you apply to a company today, your interview might not be for 4 weeks. In that time, you want to be producing maybe 4 projects. And that's the amount that I'd recommend that you do. Try to produce a small project a week or a small project every other week. By constantly producing this, you'll get in the habit of getting a job. Because at the end of your coding bootcamp, you still need to learn. I've been coding for over 20 years and I still learn new things. Also, this will separate you from all the other graduates because it shows that you are working on your craft, while other people are probably not. Thanks for listening. If you want to go to a coding bootcamp, that's great. But before you do, you should check out our online coding bootcamp called Hello Coding. It's 170 hours and it takes you all the way from web development to machine learning. You get to learn app development and game development as well. It's on sale today, so you can check out the links right below. The best part is that you get lifetime access to this course and there are no subscriptions. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We do read all the comments. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in another video.